They thought I was finished after my son, his wife, and her mother took everything from me.
There are few things more devastating than discovering that someone you have nurtured, loved, and guided has turned against you. A parent's trust in their child is built over years, rooted in the belief that the bond of family is sacred and unbreakable. To find that trust shattered is a pain unlike any other. In this case, the betrayal was not abstract or emotional alone. It was tangible, financial, and deeply personal. Your son, the very person you raised and provided for, systematically emptied your bank account. Every penny you had saved, likely over decades of hard work, was taken without warning or remorse. This act is not merely a lapse in judgment, it is a deliberate violation of the bond between parent and child. The money, which may have represented your security, your plans for the future, or even the modest comforts you allowed yourself in your later years, was seized under the guise of familial trust. What makes this betrayal particularly harrowing is the premeditated nature of it. A simple financial mistake can sometimes be forgiven, but this was not a mistake. It was a calculated action, revealing intentions that had been hidden beneath a mask of filial respect and affection. The emotional impact of such a betrayal is compounded by the realization that the person responsible is someone you have invested so much in, emotionally, financially, and morally. The trust you placed in your son was not casual, it was profound. Parents often make sacrifices believing that their children will honor their guidance and care. When that faith is met with exploitation, it shakes the very foundation of your perception of family. It is not just money that was lost, it is a sense of safety, a belief in the decency of those closest to you, and the comforting illusion that love always equates to loyalty. In this scenario, betrayal becomes a lens through which you see not just the immediate loss, but the hidden realities of human nature, the capacity for deception, greed, and selfishness, even in the most intimate relationships. The act of emptying the bank account is symbolic of a deeper fracture. The child who was once an extension of your hopes and dreams has chosen self-interest over filial duty, leaving you grappling with both material loss and a profound sense of heartbreak. The shock of betrayal is always magnified when it is compounded by complicity. In this case, the deceit was not the work of a single individual. Your son had enlisted the support and active participation of his wife and even his mother-in-law. This was not a private lapse in judgment or a momentary weakness. It was a coordinated effort, a deliberate alliance formed to exploit your trust for their gain. The involvement of multiple family members makes the betrayal more insidious because it transforms a personal act of treachery into a communal conspiracy, turning your own family into collaborators in your harm. The wife, who presumably had her own relationship with you built on shared family ties and mutual respect, aligned herself with a plan that undermined your financial security. Her participation signals that the betrayal was not merely circumstantial or born of a single lapse in judgment. It was premeditated and supported by those closest to your son. The presence of the mother-in-law adds another layer of complexity and cruelty. She was an outsider by marriage, yet her involvement demonstrates the extent to which trust can be manipulated and weaponized. The very people who should have offered guidance, restraint, or moral perspective instead became enablers, reinforcing the deceit and amplifying its impact. Family complicity also carries an emotional weight that extends beyond the financial loss. When betrayal involves multiple members, it forces a reevaluation of relationships and exposes the fragility of trust within a family network. You are left questioning not only the loyalty of your son, but also the ethics and motives of those around him. Were they motivated by greed, resentment, or a shared sense of entitlement? And how long had this alliance been forming behind your back, masked by polite conversation and feigned respect? The collective nature of this betrayal makes it a profound lesson in vigilance and discernment. It underscores the harsh reality that trust is fragile, even among those who seem closest. The pain of realizing that not one, but several family members conspired against you is a deep and lingering wound. It is an experience that shakes the foundation of familial bonds, forcing you to confront the fact that deceit can thrive in a network of intimacy, and that betrayal is often more devastating when shared. The abruptness of their departure was perhaps the clearest sign that this was not a momentary lapse in judgment, but a carefully orchestrated plan. One morning, everything seemed normal. Conversations were routine, daily life carried on as usual. Yet, by the end of the day, your son, his wife, and his mother-in-law had vanished. They left behind more than just their presence. They left a gaping void, an unsettling silence that spoke volumes about the thought and forethought behind their actions. Such a sudden exit is never coincidental. It is a deliberate maneuver designed to create confusion, delay detection, and maximize the impact of their betrayal. The methodical nature of their departure underscores the premeditation. They did not stumble into this act out of impulse. They planned it meticulously. Timing, logistics, and opportunity were all considered to ensure they could execute the scheme without immediate confrontation. Their actions suggest careful coordination, packing belongings selectively, withdrawing funds strategically, and leaving minimal traces behind. This calculated flight transforms a simple act of theft into a strategic betrayal, demonstrating that the harm was intentional and the betrayal was meant to leave lasting repercussions. Sudden departures in the context of betrayal carry not only financial, but profound emotional consequences. The shock of seeing loved ones disappear without warning can be disorienting, creating a sense of unreality. One is left questioning whether the person you trusted was ever truly the same, whether the smiles and reassurances you shared were genuine or merely part of a performance leading up to their exit. Their swift disappearance amplifies the sense of isolation, as it removes any immediate recourse for confrontation or explanation. It is a void filled with unanswered questions, mounting suspicion and emotional turmoil. Moreover, the suddenness of their flight signals a lack of conscience or remorse. There is no pause to consider the emotional fallout or the destruction left in their wake. Instead, their actions reflect a cold, calculated pursuit of their own interests, emphasizing the depth of their moral breach. Every hurried step they took away from you serves as a reminder that premeditation makes betrayal not only inevitable, but deeply personal and deliberate. The abrupt departure was more than an escape, it was a statement, a vivid confirmation that this was planned, coordinated, and executed with chilling precision. The emotional aftermath of such a betrayal is as staggering as the financial loss itself. When your own son, along with his wife and mother-in-law, orchestrates a calculated scheme to drain your bank account and vanish, it is not just your money that is taken, it is your sense of security, your trust, and your very understanding of family. Shock is the first overwhelming wave. You are left reeling, unable to comprehend how someone you raised, nurtured, and loved could commit such an act. Every memory, every moment of shared affection suddenly feels tainted, making it difficult to reconcile the person you knew with the one who betrayed you. Following shock comes anger, a burning, often uncontrollable surge of emotion. Anger at the theft itself is one thing, but anger at the deliberate planning, the deception, and the betrayal of familial loyalty cuts far deeper. You find yourself replaying conversations and events, scrutinizing past interactions for signs you may have missed, for indications that this act was quietly taking shape behind your back. The involvement of multiple family members only intensifies that anger. You are forced to confront the reality that what should have been a source of support and love became a network of deceit, leaving you questioning not only their motives, but also the authenticity of the bonds you once cherished. Deep hurt follows closely behind. Unlike anger, which is outward-facing, hurt is internal and lingering. It gnaws at the foundation of your self-esteem and sense of judgment. How could those you trusted so completely violate that trust with such cold calculation? The emotional pain is compounded by a sense of isolation as you realize that the betrayal was executed so precisely that it leaves little room for immediate recourse. Feelings of sadness, disappointment, and grief intertwine, creating a complex emotional landscape that can feel suffocating. This emotional impact is also a crucible for resilience. While the initial shock and hurt may be paralyzing, these experiences force a confrontation with reality and compel you to reassess boundaries, trust, and self-protection. It is through navigating this emotional turbulence that you begin to gather the clarity, determination, and strategy necessary to respond, not impulsively, but thoughtfully. The betrayal leaves wounds, yes, but also the seeds of strength, focus, and resolve, setting the stage for a measured and powerful response. The moment of discovery is often one of the most harrowing stages in any betrayal. It begins with a simple, routine check, a glance at your bank statements, a call to your financial institution, or a review of your accounts, and suddenly the truth hits with devastating force. Your funds, painstakingly accumulated over years, have vanished, as if swept away by an invisible hand. At first, disbelief clouds your mind. You search for explanations, hoping for some clerical error, a bank glitch, or a temporary miscalculation. But the evidence is irrefutable. Every account shows depletion, every transaction points to deliberate extraction, and the trail unmistakably leads back to your own family. The realization that your son, someone you trusted implicitly, could orchestrate such a scheme with the active involvement of his wife and mother-in-law is both shocking and deeply painful. The act of discovery forces you to confront the reality of betrayal in stark, undeniable terms. Unlike emotional betrayals that can sometimes be dismissed or rationalized, financial exploitation leaves tangible proof. A ledger of withdrawals, transfers, or suspicious payments documents not only the loss, but also the premeditation behind it. Each transaction becomes a reminder of how carefully the betrayal was planned, a concrete sign of deception that no amount of denial can erase. Tracing their actions becomes a mixture of necessity and emotional torment. You pore over statements, review phone records, and reconstruct their movements, piecing together the timeline of their deceit. It is a painstaking process, both mentally and emotionally exhausting, but it is essential for regaining a sense of control. In retracing their steps, you confront uncomfortable truths, not only about the people involved, but also about the vulnerabilities they exploited. You begin to understand the extent of the conspiracy, the layers of coordination, and the careful manipulation that allowed them to execute their plan undetected. Yet, discovery is not merely about shock and anger, it is also the first step toward empowerment. Recognizing the full scope of the betrayal equips you with knowledge, clarity, and a strategic advantage. The act of uncovering the truth transforms helplessness into determination. It is in this moment of clarity, facing the evidence head-on, that the seeds of your response are sown, marking the turning point between victimhood and action, and illuminating the path toward justice, retribution, and reclaiming what was taken from you. In the wake of such betrayal, impulsive retaliation is often the first instinct. Shock, anger, and the overwhelming desire for justice can push a person toward rash decisions. But you did not allow yourself to be consumed by emotion. Instead, you chose restraint, a deliberate, strategic pause that became the foundation of everything that followed. You understood that a response born of haste might satisfy temporary anger, but a response crafted with patience would reshape the entire narrative. In this quiet, controlled space between discovery and action, your plan began to take form. Your approach was methodical. Rather than confronting them outright, you gathered information. You reviewed every transaction, traced every movement, and documented everything with meticulous care. You examined not only what they took, but how they took it. This was not simply about recovering what was stolen, it was about understanding the full scope of their actions and preparing a calculated path forward. Each detail became a small piece of a larger puzzle, one that would reveal how to turn the tables in a way they never anticipated. Planning revenge did not mean resorting to illegal or unethical extremes. It meant using intelligence, strategy, and patience to ensure that the consequences they faced were a direct result of their own choices. You considered every element: financial, emotional, and legal. How would their disappearance impact their obligations? How would the missing funds expose them to scrutiny? What protections were available to you? What weaknesses had they overlooked in their haste? Slowly, you constructed a response that was not only justified, but unassailable. Throughout this process, you maintained composure. You confided in no one, allowing them to believe their escape was clean and their crime undetected. This silence became your greatest advantage. They expected rage, chaos, or confrontation. What they did not expect was quiet. And within that quiet, your plan took shape with precision. Your revenge became not an act of fury, but a testament to patience, a reminder that those who betray trust often underestimate the strength and resolve of the person they wronged. By choosing strategy over anger, you reclaimed your power. You did not react, you responded. And that response would ultimately redefine the story entirely. When the moment for action finally arrived, it was not marked by anger or chaos, but by quiet, calculated resolve. Your plan, carefully nurtured in the shadows of their betrayal, was ready. Unlike their abrupt, reckless departure, your response unfolded with precision. Every move you made was deliberate, every decision measured. You understood that true revenge is not loud, it is effective. And the effectiveness of your strategy lay in the fact that they never saw it coming. Your first step was reclaiming control. You secured your accounts, notified financial institutions, and documented every irregular transaction they had made. What they believed was the perfect escape had a clear and traceable path, one you were able to present in a structured, undeniable manner. Whether through legal channels, investigative avenues, or personal leverage, you positioned yourself so that their own actions became the source of their downfall. The brilliance of your approach was that you did not need to fabricate anything. The truth itself was damning enough. Next came the reveal, not dramatic, not emotional, but devastatingly effective. Perhaps it was a legal investigation suddenly closing in on them. Perhaps social or familial circles began asking questions based on the evidence you quietly placed in the right hands. Perhaps you strategically allowed certain people to learn the truth, letting judgment come from all directions instead of just your own. Their unity, the conspiracy they had formed against you, began to fracture under the weight of exposure. People who act together in betrayal rarely stand together when consequences arrive. Your execution was not simply about punishment, it was about reclaiming dignity and restoring balance. The tables were turned completely. Where once they felt empowered, now they faced the consequences of their own greed and deception. Their journey, so confidently embarked upon with stolen resources, became overshadowed by the unraveling of their scheme. You did not need to chase them, you did not need to shout, you simply allowed their own actions, illuminated by your strategic response, to collapse upon them. What made your execution powerful was not force, but finesse. You demonstrated that justice can be delivered with intellect rather than impulse. Through thoughtful action, you reminded them, and yourself, that betrayal may wound deeply, but it does not define you. Your strength, precision, and unwavering composure transformed a moment of victimhood into a decisive and unforgettable assertion of power. The culmination of careful planning and strategic execution is the arrival of consequences. After their calculated betrayal, your son, his wife, and his mother-in-law were confident they had escaped accountability, but their confidence was misplaced. Every action they had taken, each withdrawal, each transfer, each attempt to conceal their tracks, now served as evidence of their wrongdoing. What they believed would shield them from scrutiny became the very mechanism by which justice caught up to them. The consequences they faced were not arbitrary or vengeful. They were the natural outcome of their choices, meticulously revealed through your strategic response. The repercussions were multi-layered. Financially, they were confronted with the reality that the stolen funds could not simply disappear. The paper trail you had traced left them vulnerable to legal recovery and restitution. The careful documentation you had maintained ensured that the law was firmly on your side, transforming your claim from one of mere accusation to one of undeniable proof. Socially and emotionally, the exposure of their betrayal eroded trust and respect within the wider family and community. The alliance they had relied upon, each other and the perceived protection of secrecy, began to crumble under scrutiny. Their reputation, once assumed secure, now bore the unmistakable stain of deceit. Perhaps most profoundly, the consequences underscore a moral truth. Betrayal, no matter how cleverly executed, carries its own weight. The very act that empowered them temporarily, emptying your bank account, fleeing in coordination, became the source of their downfall. What they sought as gain turned to exposure, isolation, and accountability. Your plan ensured that they were confronted not by your wrath alone, but by the natural repercussions of their own actions. They experienced the discomfort, fear, and disruption they had intended for you, forcing them to reckon with the gravity of their choices. The power of these consequences lies not only in restitution, but in justice served with clarity and fairness. You did not stoop to malice. You allowed truth, preparation, and strategy to dictate the outcome. The repercussions were proportional, precise, and inevitable, a reflection of the careful way you had turned their betrayal into a lesson they could not ignore. In the end, their actions came full circle, and the consequences they faced became a testament to your intelligence, patience, and unshakable resolve. After the storm of betrayal, exposure, and consequences, the final chapter in your journey was the restoration of justice. This was not merely a return of stolen funds. It was a reclamation of control, dignity, and peace of mind. Through patience, strategy, and unwavering resolve, you transformed a situation that could have left you powerless into one that reaffirmed your strength. The act of restoring justice was symbolic as well as practical, signaling to yourself and others that betrayal, no matter how calculated, cannot permanently strip away integrity or authority. Financial restoration was the most immediate marker of this justice. The careful documentation of transactions, the tracing of movements, and the strategic exposure of their scheme allowed you to recover what was taken. Every recovered dollar represented not just material compensation, but a triumph of foresight and diligence over deception. Beyond numbers, this recovery symbolized the restoration of security, both tangible and emotional. Where uncertainty and vulnerability had once dominated, there was now clarity and confidence. Your ability to regain control over your finances demonstrated that even in the face of sophisticated betrayal, measured action can reclaim what is rightfully yours. Equally important was the restoration of dignity. The emotional wounds inflicted by your son and his accomplices were deep, but you refused to let anger or humiliation define your response. By responding with strategy rather than impulsivity, you asserted that betrayal could not dictate your identity. You regained the moral high ground, demonstrating that justice does not always roar. It often arrives with quiet, unassailable precision. Friends, family, or even those who had doubted your judgment witnessed not a victim, but a person who turned adversity into empowerment. Personal security, both emotional and practical, was also reestablished. Trust had been broken, but your careful actions allowed you to set boundaries, protect yourself from future exploitation, and rebuild a sense of safety. Every precaution, every adjustment in your financial and personal life reinforced that you were no longer vulnerable to the manipulation of others. In essence, justice was not only recovered externally in terms of restitution, but internally as a reaffirmation of control over your life, choices, and well-being. Ultimately, the restoration of justice completed the narrative arc of betrayal and retribution. It was the tangible proof that patience, intelligence, and resilience can overcome even the most personal and painful acts of treachery. It affirmed that while betrayal wounds, strategic action heals and restores not only what was taken, but the very sense of self that had been challenged. Every painful experience carries the potential for profound learning, and the betrayal by your son, his wife, and mother-in-law was no exception. While the immediate aftermath was filled with shock, anger, and hurt, the long-term lesson lies in the perspective gained from navigating such a calculated betrayal. This ordeal underscored a fundamental truth: trust is precious, but it is also fragile. The blind faith we place in loved ones must be balanced with discernment, awareness, and a readiness to protect oneself. While trust is essential to human connection, this experience illuminated that it must never be unconditional in the absence of accountability. Another critical lesson emerged in the form of patience and strategy. Betrayal naturally triggers an emotional response, a desire for instant retribution fueled by outrage. Yet your decision to pause, assess, and plan instead of reacting impulsively transformed a moment of potential vulnerability into a position of strength. This experience revealed that measured, strategic action often achieves far more lasting results than immediate, emotionally driven retaliation. By thinking several steps ahead, anticipating potential outcomes, and carefully executing a plan, you ensured that justice was both effective and fair, rather than reactive and potentially destructive. Moreover, the ordeal emphasized resilience and self-reliance. Experiencing betrayal by those closest to you can shake confidence and leave emotional scars, but it also provides an opportunity to cultivate inner strength. You learned that adversity, when approached with clarity and purpose, can be transformed into empowerment. Every calculated decision, every step toward reclaiming control, reinforced your capacity to navigate challenges with calm determination, rather than allowing chaos and anger to dictate your actions. Finally, the experience highlighted the nuanced understanding of human behavior. Not everyone will act with integrity, even when bound by family ties. Recognizing this reality does not diminish your capacity for trust, but it equips you to safeguard yourself and your interests more wisely in the future. In essence, this life lesson is twofold: trust wisely and respond with strategy rather than emotion. The betrayal was a harsh teacher, but it left you armed with patience, discernment, and resilience. It demonstrated that strength lies not in immediate retaliation, but in thoughtful, deliberate action, a lesson that will guide decisions, relationships, and self-protection for years to come. If this story moved you, if you felt the pain, the betrayal, and the power of justice, please like this video. Your like supports everyone who has been silently hurt by betrayal from those they trusted most. For more real-life stories, deep lessons, and powerful narratives like this, subscribe to the channel, because this isn't just storytelling, it's truth with purpose. And now, comment below. If you were in this situation, would you react with anger, or would you stay calm and respond with strategy? Your words might help someone who is going through the same storm right now. See you in the next video with another story that isn't just told, it's felt.